That really struck me. I would just imagine that. I keep hearing you say your daughter was seeing, and I just imagine how you were making these decisions for and with your daughter.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really standing out to me. You mentioned her every other sentence, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I can assume, but I don't want to assume, but sounds like your daughter has a huge influence on you.
She does.
I
didn't want to do this.
Be yourself. Be yourself.
I don't realize it sometimes, but from the moment that I brought her into this world, because I was like, I did not want any kids. I was like, what? I'm going to be a rich lawyer with a rich husband, traveling the world. I want no children. But I said, okay, this is my life. And what I won't do is be a statistic. A sidebar, I went to the public assistance office and they said, oh, your mother and father have to take care of you. And I was like,
oh, wow.
What?
Look at that.
I said, I will never come back into this office again. And I never stepped foot back into that office again. And I needed to show her, like, we as Black women, we can carry the world on our shoulders, but I have a responsibility to say, this is what we can do no matter how hard it gets. And we can do it.
Right.
So that is why, like, I literally do mention her in every other sentence.
It's beautiful.
Nah,
and
She
I'm imagining...
becomes a famous sports agent, I want a stipend.
I know, that's right. I'm imagining you doing your schoolwork, your coursework, coming home from work, and her doing her homework by your side.
Yeah, it was really like that.
Right.
Like, I'd have my computer, she'd be on the phone doing her homework. Wow. It was... I know, I might be a little too transparent.
No, please, bring it out.
She was a breastfed baby, so she's very attached.
Gotcha.
So it was just another form of this bonding because she'd be doing it, her homework, and I'd be doing my homework and writing my papers. And listen, I had to cook dinner. I had to do it all. But before I even started school, I was working like 3 jobs. I was working my full-time job and 2 part-time jobs. My siblings would help me. My cousins would help me. And she'd be like, can you stop working so much? I just want to see my mom. And then, it got to a place where I was like, okay, I can work this one job and then go to school. So when I went back to school, she was 10. And those are those years.
The formative years, yeah.
So formative. And yeah, every year is formative, but 10 and through high school, it's just like, Lord have mercy. Please help me. But I was there, and I was able to, like, if they called me at the school, I was able to go to the school and look at her like, if they call me one more time. But I was able to be there.
So when you're a single mom and you're still pushing through, where did that come from in the midst of the really serious challenges?
I respect and cherish my ancestors. And I grew up with my grandparents too. And in my life, I used to talk to them. I used to just sit down and talk to my grandparents. And I understood their story. Like my grandfather from my mother's dad came from Puerto Rico. Said he had nothing. He said he had 1 pair of shoes when he came here. And he walked. And by the time he got to Harlem, the rubber was burnt out. My father's parents, my grandmother came over from Jamaica when she was 8. My grandfather, he was in World War II. Wow. I understand what they went through as immigrants because coming from Puerto Rico, you were an immigrant at that time. Then, seeing the environment I was in, I was like, God, this is not my life. I'm not going to be forever growing up in New York City Housing Authority. I'm not going to build a legacy in New York City Housing Authority. I know that whatever my grandparents went through and their parents went through to get us here, I have to do better. I can't be responsible for everybody else, but it wasn't the environment that I wanted for myself or my daughter. I wanted more. I wanted more because I know that the people that came before me, they wanted more for me. And I understand systematically we get broken down, systematically we get torn apart and we get separated and I could not let that happen to me. And that is really, to this day, what keeps me going. Even when I'm not pleased with what's going on in politics, I'm like, I can't say that I won't go vote. My grandfather came from the South and my grandmother, and they could not. And then they had the right to do it. So they fought for that right to do it. So that is a disrespect to them for me to say, I won't do it. All of that kept me going. And then you bring this whole human being into this world and you look at that person and say, everything that these people did for me, I got to do for her. And I got to push harder. By no means was I a perfect mom, right? I had to learn. I was freaking 20 years old, right? And that's what did it for me. That's what does it for me. And I just, I was not trying to be victim. I was not trying to be a victim of my own environment. I was not trying to be complacent and let the world say, oh, because you are from the Bronx and because you live in the projects and because you had a baby early, you ain't going to be nothing. That wasn't going to be my story.
That's a major point. I mean, knowing your story and then having that strength to carry it on through your child, that allowed you to be present for her. But who was present for you in the meantime, right? Because you didn't do this alone.
No.
So if you had support, what exactly did that support look like? What does support look like?
My mom is dope. My stepdad, he's no longer with us. You know, my aunts, my godmother. My godmother was a fierce woman. And she, was in the courts. So that she's one of the reasons I wanted to be a lawyer. She was a court officer, then she was a clerk. And I used to just go sit in the courtroom with her, when I would go spend the weekends. And I would just go sit in the courtroom and watch the cases. So I look at the negative and the positives in my life, and I'm like, okay, that's not what I want. But then the positives, okay, let me see how I can massage that and make it better. So the support was there. Everybody was pissed at me. Oh, I'm sorry. Can I take this?
Go ahead.
You're fine.
I was wondering that too.
Everybody was pissed at me when I got pregnant. Oh my goodness. My godmother was mad. My aunt was like, how could you do this? I'm like, oh my God, am I causing the next plague?
Oh my goodness.
No, well, but do you understand where that comes from?
I understand where it comes from.
Because
I understand. My mom couldn't even look at me. But my stepdad.
How exactly did they show up?
I want to emphasize on a man being his stepfather, right? Because I don't think that stepfathers get a lot of accolades. It's always kind of a bad situation. Richard Lee Sisko Jr., one of the best men that could have impacted me. So through high school, right? Because if I got into trouble, I can go to him. I was on the yearbook committee and I was like, oh, Dad, I need a drawing. And he drew the teddy bear for our yearbook. I was in piano. So he was a musician. So we connected and my piano teacher was like, oh my God, I love you. You're the best piano teacher. That's all, from my stepdad. And then when I got pregnant, he just sat down and looked me in my eyes and he said, this is not the end for you. And that right there, because you were asking me, how?
Yeah.
That right there meant everything in the world. Because I promise you, I wanted to be a lawyer and I was in John Jay and then I got pregnant. I thought it was the end for me. I was like, here I am, right? Don't laugh, but okay, just another girl in the IRT, right? Totally not that situation, people. But, in my head, it's
of course.
in the projects, you get young. You have a young baby, get pregnant at a young age, and then you're stuck. And when my mother couldn't look at me, I had my stepdad and my dad, right? Because I'm not going to say my stepdad anymore, but my dad. And he supported me. He was there. I had my best friends, right? They were like, it's okay. We got you.
Mhm.
And that's really how I got, because I absolutely couldn't do this by myself. And I was very sick when I was pregnant. The turning point for my mom is when I ended up in the hospital and she thought she was going to lose me.
How many siblings do you have? Others?
I have 2 brothers. I have a sister. And then some from my stepdad.
Where do you fall in line? Middle?
I'm the
First?
oldest.
Oh, got it.
Oh,
The oldest.
what some people call the test baby,
I am the oldest.
right?
Yeah, I'm the oldest. So it was a lot of pressure.
I was about to
There's a lot
say,
of
I
pressure.
feel that
Because then
pressure.
I'm
Yes.
like, all right, Obi's here, and then she's pregnant. What do you mean she's pregnant? Like, it was like, I was like,
What it sounds like to me is that there's so much power in words. Because right at the time when you got pregnant, it seemed like, was there like a bout with depression at all? Because it seems like there was, it's just, it seems like obviously being on a pedestal, right? And feeling like you've let so many people down.
Yep.
But then having a counter individual, right, with just a different words, and it seemed like there was something there that just stopped the negative self-talk. And then what I'm hearing is like, wow, I don't know if the women that in my family, right, I'm like, wow, I don't know, like if would that have made a difference if at the moment of impact,
yeah,
right,
Yeah.
someone came and told them like, hey, this is not it for you. What's interesting is that you said your stepfather, you actually looked at him as a man, because it looks like it was a man disappointing you, a man that let you down, but another man that came, and like the women around you were like, yo, looking at what's going on, like how do you do that? Like we're looking up to you, like now what do we do?
yeah.
But then another man comes and says,
And balances that out.
balance that, the other negative that you're experiencing.
Yeah.
Did you actually really connect with the power of influence?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had strong male. Both of my grandfathers were amazing. So I've had the positive and strong male role models and know what it was to love and to take care of your families. I've had that in my life. So me meeting someone that disappointed me, my biological father disappointed me. There was something in me that said, well, I can't use those bad experiences against every man that I meet, right? Because I have the positive experiences. So my dad, Richard Lee Cisco Jr., he came and he was that light and that force. Because even me being a young mom at the time and having my daughter's father was not there as he should have been, it still didn't make me go on this like rant to hate men, because I had my dad, I had my grandparents, my grandfathers, so I had that. And in different areas of my life, there's always these positive men that come into my life and stay around and support and root me on. And then for every man that is negative in my life, that positive light kind of just dims everything else. So yeah, it's a powerful force.
I didn't start having children. When I was 30, I started having children. I had my son when I was 40 years old, which was great. I loved it. It was the best. I just loved being pregnant.
I know.
I thought I would get pregnant 30, 40, 50. It didn't happen when I was 50, but anyway.
Thank goodness. You got time for that?
So we worked opposite each other.
Morning shift, night shift, is that what you're talking about?
So I worked initially 5 days. Bernard worked weekends. And then evenings. So we didn't see each other
That's like my
weekends.
parents. Wow.
And then Thursdays he had to do something. They gave him some time on Thursdays. So I took off on Thursdays. So there was always somebody around the clock. I guess maybe we were overprotective of you guys. Maybe. You think?
I just learned how to cross the street this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So I'm kidding.
I'm sorry, Karen. I'm sorry. But at the same time, permissive, because when you were in high school and your friends would come over at 1 o'clock on a Saturday night, my door was open, and DeBrickashaw was one of them. Wait, for what game? What team?
The Jets.
The Jets. Now, when he came in, the whole kitchen would shake, and then
6'5", 240.
yeah, they'd come in 1, 2 o'clock, good kids, not drinking, whatever. And I say, here's the turkey meat, here's the red peppers, the onions, and everybody had their chore, and they cooked. It was great. And then even these big, strong guys, because you and Ashley were playing. My mother told me.
A lot of my friends were like track stars and basketball, football players and stuff. So we all hang out.
Yeah.
It was wonderful that my parents.
And then they watch Karen Ashley
playing.
and then they say, "Well, I saw my sister doing it," and they're like, "My mother," I wish I had that on tape because they were so ultra, you know, masculine with it. They didn't want to show, you know what I'm saying. It was so much fun.
But you were not only parenting me, but welcoming my neighborhood friends into the home, taking us bowling and skating and swimming and all these things, and somehow finishing your master's while you were taking turns, because it was just me at the time, you finished your master's, and I was sharing a little bit with the team here about what that was like. I would like to hear from you, just sharing what that was like, and then earning it, and then what was it like once you earned it and you shared that at work? And how was that received when you took that step for yourself?
Well, this is the thing, unfortunately. Whether you're in school or you're in a program, no matter what experience you've had, because even before I went to anesthesia school, I was working in the emergency room, a head nurse, relief supervisor at the age of 25, 60 people. So I wasn't there to be looking, for, husband. Ron said I should have gone into veterinarian school, but I took this job because I really love people.
But you love animals.
And I love animals too. I love animals.
Critters.
I really love people.
Mm-hmm.
And I was working in the community that I grew up in, that I understood, that I could speak to at a grassroots level. And I felt like I was making a difference. I'm not patting myself on the back. And I loved it. I really loved it. I enjoyed the energy, even though, some traumatic things have happened. I got hit in the face with a crutch, and, guy on PCP grabbed my clamp and was chasing me down the hallway, inches from stabbing in the back. I mean, some stuff happened. And I had to beat up a girl. It was perfect, though.
Before you get to that, let me get to Renard. What brought you into your profession?
When I was coming out of high school in the South, there weren't a whole lot of options for me in Natchez, Mississippi. I mean, if you want to make a living, you have to probably be an undertaker, or you would probably become an educator. And a lot of the jobs were like, labor. There weren't a whole lot of people encouraging you to go into the sciences or to become a pharmacist, a doctor, or a lawyer, because you didn't know many people. I had a cousin who became a lawyer, but he was such an oddity. Like, whoa, this guy, wow. When I was at Jackson State, I was a bio major. I said, I want to be a physician. I kind of took a lot of these courses, and there are things I took which I'll never use in my life, molarity and molality and crystal lattice formulas and stuff. Anyway, so I just kind of lost interest after a while because, I didn't have a lazy brain, but I just wasn't willing to put the time into it. And I found that it just didn't interest me anymore because my interest was probably less altruism, but selfish. It'd be great to have the MD title, having the license plate. I mean, that kind of thing. And you can, you as a physician, you open doors all over the world. But anyway, so I started that. Then as time passed, it just kind of waned away from me. But then I ran into someone who was doing this radiology program. I applied and I was accepted and I did well with it. And I practiced radiology for 8 or 9 years before I decided to go back to school and finish to get my bachelor's. This is where I met my beautiful bride. I just had this knack for helping people. Plus, I enjoyed the science of it. I enjoyed the excitement of when, not from their sake, for my sake, someone gets shot, for example, and they rush him to the emergency room. One opportunity to take a radiograph to find out where the bullet is. They shoot him up to the OR, and you have to come up with that film, stick it up on a light like this, and they say, "Oh, the bullet's here and there," that kind of thing. And you had to know what you were doing because you don't come up with the picture was too light or too dark. So what the hell's a bullet? Then they had delay the surgery. It could mean someone's life. So anyway, I got pretty good at doing different type of studies and finding that fracture, which was sometimes missed if you get the right angle. So it was a science to it. And maybe I just thought I was too smart after a while. I was getting bored with it. So I went back to school and I got a bachelor's in radiologic sciences. So that means I was considered as an administrator and as an educator. So it just blossomed from there.
Your choice is to choose different. I can gather that if your parents mistreated you or your parents did not raise you with the most affection, it's probably because that was learned behavior. But it seemed like there's a point where you said, this stops with our line. Where did that come from? To make a choice to say, okay, generation, I'm gonna not replicate that. Because I wasn't raised, the belt was something I feared. And, temporarily. After a while, right, I was just like, I could just kind of equate. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna stay out to 2. I'm gonna get a whipping, and I could equate the 2. I'm like, okay, how good of a time am I gonna have?
Right.
Is it worth it? Is it not? We're gonna go have some good time. I just kind of knew, and I'd break rules, knowing I remember when I got my first part in my head. I knew that I couldn't wear my hat all night long. I'd eventually, right? Because I was told no, I can't have a part in my head. I'm like, okay, all my friends have a part. Or getting an earring, all my friends have an earring. Right? All the things I'm like, okay, we're gonna do this.
See, the reason why I got whippings from my father,
Yeah.
and this is sad, he was, the darkest out of 13 children.
Mm.
He came to the United States. I mean, he told us that, we had to walk to school barefoot and all that. And I think he was just saying that to make us feel like, don't ask for so much from us. And we didn't, But he didn't have that. He had a brother who was born in the 1800s.
Mm.
Yeah, Uncle Milton. Uncle Milton. And he has seen the English
Mhm.
beat their slaves, by having them, on a post with their wrists tied. And Uncle Milton did the same things to his children.
Wow.
He was taught that.
Wow.
My father, when he came to this country to go to school, he went to Tuskegee Institute
Mhm.
for agriculture, and he went to McGill University for animal husbandry. I cannot imagine what he went through in the 40s down south. He never spoke about it. So when I'm growing up and I'm seeing, images of Malcolm X or other, civil rights figures on like it is, and I'm questioning him, he never spoke on those things. He had a lot of different things going on, and then, my mother didn't want to move back to Jamaica. That's where he could realize his college education. He never told me these things. I had to dig and find out who is this man, and why is he acting the way that he is. And then I would speak to his siblings and put the composite together and say, wow, I have to give him a pass. So it was frustration, and he took it out on me because, I'm not being the perfect child, because I'm questioning, why are you beating me? Why are you treating my brother this way? When I questioned, I got, and sometimes ridiculous. And I said, look, don't beat me, punish me, because I'm not, and I'm speaking like an adult. And that would make him want to beat me more,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to relinquish my power. If that's what I was calling it then. And, you can squeeze and you can do whatever you want, but I'm mercury, I'm sand. You do this, I'm going to, eventually I'm just going to slip right through your hands. And I feel sorry for him because he was very smart to get into McGill University in the 40s.
And I'll come back to that. So there's 2 things here. The trauma of growing up in Jim Crow South did not suffocate you as a person and as a man.
And you know that.
Well, based on what you have shared, two things you've shared is that you're very affectionate with your children, and knowing the stress and all the different impact that slavery has had, that's the opposite of love.
Well, I tell you, I try not to think about it too often because there are movies and there are a lot of programs that come on TV lately with all the politics and drama going on that these things are resurfacing. And I have apologized to my children to say, man, I'm sorry that y'all going through this shit again. I was in Mississippi as a youngster. I think I was 8 years old during the Emmett Till experience. And that kind of thing, I didn't hear about it until I was like a teenager. And that's when I was getting of age. We were starting to learn about people like Martin Luther King and all them. Then I had my little afro, my dashiki, my afro picked with the fist. Come, you know what I'm talking about.
I totally know what you're talking about, of course.
So anyway, all these things put me in a position of, moving away from hating people, but just trying to be patient and trying to not become, absorbed by this sort of thing. I don't have any particular formula for saying why I can still be kind of cool and laid back about it, but it is nowadays it's a constant reminder. It's like picking at a scab. Am I angry black man? No.
Yeah.
Do I have anything on the back burner? Yes.
Understood.
Low flame.
Understood.
Sitting on the edge of my chair. What you saying? Okay.
You said that he saw the young girl in you and he nurtured that young girl.
That meant a lot. It was healing. And, without being able to identify exactly what that was until we explored that, I felt protected. Even if he wasn't around me, I felt protected because I felt loved. Because, like with certain cultures, they don't say I love you and they don't say I'm sorry. And Renard made it all right. Yeah, you made it all right. Thanks.
Somebody's trying to bring us back there.
When I think about, your experiences, and I really appreciate you now being in the coolest club on the planet, the Club of Retirees, the Everyday Saturday Club. I think about, just the breadth of experience that you both had. And it's so much fun to me to think about people walking around who you may have given anesthesia to or trained, or people whose scans you've read or pictures you've taken. First of all, thank you both.
Yes.
I mean, mom and dad. You've done so much here for us today, and of course for me, but for anyone who might listen to this, is there a nugget you'd like to leave on the table for our audience?
Here's something. The thing that is so important to me, because I was able to, recapture a relationship with my parents. It took a while. There were no sorries or, nobody got thrown under the bus and all that, because it's hard to have relationships are hard.
Mm-hmm.
And depending on how many outside forces, come in, I think it's important to, go a little deeper with our family, and don't be afraid to ask some questions. Don't be afraid to try to change the dynamic of the relationship. Sometimes they need help because they were treated a certain way. And you can even apologize for that and say, I'm sorry it was like that for you, because I saw what was happening from my grandmother to my mother and then from my mother to me. And I understood because my mother was not my grandmother's favorite. And she did the most for grandma. And I wasn't my mother's favorite, but I did the most for my mother, you know what I'm saying? And I felt bad for her because she missed out on a lot. So if we could just let our parents know that.
My nugget is...
That's all.
My nugget is in management. I was a little bit different from some of the managers because I took a position similar to Maslow. He had a sense of hierarchy, what's important. And but extrapolate that into myself. I would say to the staff, usually when I would come to a place, I would introduce myself. And I would say that, first of all, I'm a human being just like you. I'm a man just like half of you. And I went through the whole hierarchy thing, all to the point of, I got grandmothers and I got sisters, brothers, so. And I'm also a technologist like you. Now I'm a manager. So I'm all of those things first. So when you come to me and say you have a problem, I can understand. You're not going to have so many grandmothers to die. First time you get it, the second time, no. You say, I can't go to work, Mr. Green. But, so I put that position there. And then I also found that there's such thing as an abrasive manager. You don't have to be a bitch to be successful. You don't have to be such a hard ass to, to run the department. You can be human, you can be civil. And I will tell you, each place I've left, they have been almost emotional. Oh, Mr. Green, you leave. Thank you, everybody. You're up at the wrap up.
I agree with his philosophy 100%. At any point, anytime I put my hand on a patient, I treat them the way that I would want to be treated, first of all. Because I've been a patient and I've been treated very poorly. That's all.
Thank you. See, I'm just
saying. No, I said I was going to make it short.
That's what I think that I can offer best to the community, is just being honest and giving my life experiences to every story that I want to tell. Yeah, I just want to make it honest and let people see them. I mean, look at my family on paper, and you basically want to throw away the paper. No, I want to know those people. But on my paper, they are quite beautiful, and everybody loves them, and you root for them, and it humanizes them. I'll tell any story, and I'll tell it honestly and truthfully and get to everywhere that I want to be artistically. But if I'm writing it, if I'm producing it, if I have to be in charge of the stories that I tell, then those are the ones that I'm working toward, because those are the ones that I'm going to tell the best.
So tell us, that's a good segue into your experience growing up in Brownsville and Langston Hughes Projects, one of 4 children. Tell us about that experience.
Oh, Lord. Where do I begin? Well, Brownsville is predominantly black, right? So, like, I didn't want to be white. I didn't want to be Latina. I wanted to be black.
Already, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, go ahead. Yes.
Well, I just wanted to fit in. So basically, I'm just a fish out of water wherever I am. But that also has helped me to be adaptable as an adult. But being in Brownsville, I grew up in the Langston Hughes Projects, which they are the tallest buildings in East New York.
Okay.
So they were also like the toughest buildings in East New York. Like, you don't walk through the Langston
Brownsville,
Hughes
yeah,
Projects. You
yeah.
got to take another way.
That's right. That's
So,
right.
so that kind of thing also, that made me feel proud when I was growing up, because I felt like, look at me, I'm so soft, right? But I'm like the toughest, the baddest. Langston, you don't mess with us. So it was a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
Where you're super proud of it. When you look at it a different way, where like you're having a party and your sister's inviting people from high school to come, and you're like, let us know what train you're gonna be on so that we could wait for you there and walk you up, because you cannot come up alone.
Yeah.
And there was somebody who did not understand that lesson. We told them, do not go down alone. If you need cigarettes, you need to tell us. We need to walk you down.
Yeah.
We need to come down with you. And somebody didn't listen to us, and they definitely got jacked. And it ruined the whole party. So it's like it's really a double-edged sword, right?
Yeah,
like you love
yeah,
it,
yeah.
a part of it, and then you realize the realities of it. But you grow up in a way that you're always like looking for things out of place, you got the eyes on the back of your head.
What's interesting is, like you said, like, because
I just wanted to fit in, which I think
Yeah.
is something very relatable,
Yeah.
because wherever you live,
Yeah.
whoever your school friends are, that's who you want to be, no
Yeah.
matter who you are.
Yeah.
Right? No matter where you are, no matter who you are, and if you look like you belong there and everybody feels like you belong, that's a whole other experience.
Yeah.
So that just wasn't my experience.
Yes.
But there are other places where those people, where, if they grew up in a place where they feel totally comfortable, they might go somewhere else and then feel uncomfortable. So I feel like that's a relatable experience no matter what.
Brownsville today, right? How familiar are you with Brownsville today? Because I know you have a lot of people who may be from somewhere, but they may not, be as familiar with all the changes. And Brooklyn's been changing.
Yes.
Your Brownsville
Not Brownsville as much, not like the Langston Hughes Projects. It's funny, when I went to, so we just filmed Brownsville Bread, a portion of it, actually in Brownsville.
Right.
Like in front of the
Beautifully shot,
Langston
by the
Hughes
way.
project. Thank you so much. I agree.
Yes,
I agree. I love it. So we shot it in front of my old projects in my school, in my elementary school.
Wow.
So we went there with the head of community affairs, police department, NYPD, whatever, Nietzsche, or whatever it is.
Nice.
And then we went also, we hooked up with the head of the building, and they were wonderful. And we're scouting, we're like, oh, go on over here, look over here. What about this? What about, oh, I want the, And then Elaine, it was Jesse Clark from my elementary school. Also, I hooked up with my old neighbor. He's not there anymore, but his cousin now lives in that apartment. So like my family has since gone out, but I'm still actually, I try to be a part of the neighborhood as much as I can. And every year we actually do some give back to the community that we don't talk about a lot. It's called the Community Police Relations Foundation. No police are on it. It's a foundation by other people who are meant to bring police and community together in positive interactions. And so we do a lot of work through them, giving away like computers and, knapsack school stuff, cool school supplies. So we try to do that at least twice a year. And like when they have community events, which was such a big deal for me when I was a kid, when we used to have our block party and everything was like all the talent would be there. The talent show was my favorite day of the year because there's so much talent in Brownsville, so much singing and dancing talent, but they don't take classes. They don't, they aren't encouraged toward the arts. I believe that we need more art programs in places like Brownsville in order to allow people to understand that should they desire to be in this work life, in this chosen career path, that it's available, it's open for them. I'm old now, but I'm older now than I was, certainly, but back then there was a lot less of it even than there is today, but I still feel like there's not enough of it today.
First of all, you are wonderful to listen to and to watch, and thank you so much for sharing your energy with us. Just from meeting you and hearing what you share, community is a big word that keeps coming up from you. What would you say your community's given to you?
I'm not trying to get anything from it.
Or done for you, I should
But
say.
I mean, I believe that everyone's struggle, it's how you look at it. Because that from there is where your life lessons come. So everybody has a different struggle. Even, wealthy people in wealthy neighborhoods, they have a different struggle. But all of those things really form them as human beings.
Right.
For me, it's so funny because even in my stage play, there's an attempted rape that happened to me when I was 12 years old. I was on the way to the train station, and we're told to look in back of us to see, who's gonna grab us, and it was actually the guy in front of me that grabbed me. Right? So what do you learn? It's not what you think. It might be something else, right? It's not the tall guy that looks like he's threatening. It might be the short guy, the guy that's just your height. And then we walked for blocks and blocks. It was broad daylight. Nobody was helping me. I was crying, but I was afraid to scream because he said, like, I got a gun. If I take it out, I'm going to shoot. I said to him, if you got a gun, you should take it out. I don't know why I said that. But the reason.
You don't know why.
I just had him like talking.
I'm sure he was like, okay.
But you wouldn't imagine that that's a question that somebody would, that's a demand that somebody would say, like, if you got a gun, then you should take it out.
Well,
Then you should
especially-
show it to me. You should
Correct.
show it to me. He said, if I take it out, then I'm going to shoot you. I didn't believe that he had a gun because he wasn't showing it to me. Right? So I was just trying to keep him talking, and I was trying to convince him like not to rape me. And he told me he was going to rape me. And we're walking, and then like as we're walking, we passed the old school that my father actually was a janitor at, but it was all boarded up and closed down by then. When I was a kid, I remember this woman coming home from a discotheque at night, almost raped and brought into the park of the school that was all closed down. And so as I was passing it, I kept thinking about her. And she told her assailant that she had her period, and so not to rape her because she was trying to turn him off. So I started telling him, I got my period. I was telling him everything. And then we get to like where I know like there's no people that are gonna help me there. We get like by the number 3 train station down under Livonia. It's all very dark. There's a lot of abandoned buildings, a lot of, like where you go to just shoot up heroin, a lot of, just not good things going on. I was pretty sure if I got there wasn't a chance that anybody would ever help me. that's when I started hitting him with my book bag as hard as I could. And I was like, no, no. And I just kept hitting. And I actually had an out of body experience. I woke up and realized, now I didn't know that I was hitting him. So I woke up and I realized the person that was hitting this guy, like I had my knees on his shoulders. I was 12 years old.
Wow.
I was just scratching him and hitting him and scratching him and hitting him. And I didn't realize that that was me. So I had this outer body experience, and then when I realized that, I got up, I got my book bag, and I went up the train station stairs, and I looked back at him, and he was running away, and I became so happy. Now, the reason why I tell this story like this is because you don't know what you're going to do until you're put up into that position. Everybody could say, I would do this, I would do that, but you actually don't know until you have the experience. And so you asked the question, what I got from the neighborhood. An experience like that, I know what I would do. And so knowing yourself helps you to build confidence and know the things, not to say that I was all, healed and ready by then, because there's a lot more things that happened throughout my life. My father was a heroin addict that ended up contracting HIV and dying of AIDS. And that for me was a lot of healing going on. That needed a lot of healing. A part of telling the story of Brownsville Bread is definitely the story of the daughter and the father, and seeing that in a way that could be positive for her future. And that is what being in Brownsville gave me. It gave me this amazing platform that now I could say Brownsville Bread, never ran, never will. And I couldn't do that otherwise, right? Nobody says like Canarsie, see? No.
I had to represent, because I heard out of Brownsville you were. I was like, oh, word? All right, okay.
I ain't never scared.
Well, no, I'm always scared, and I'm never scared.
No, that's a good segue, because you mentioned your father was a heroin addict, and you just referenced that I'm never scared, but I'm always scared.
Yeah.
It's almost this like there's this duality that exists in your life growing up in that household.
Well, I have to say, I love my apartment. I feel like if I went back there today, it might look a lot smaller, but we had a 3-bedroom apartment, a 1-bathroom, a kitchen and living room. I recreated it for the film as much as I could. I actually tried to get into the projects, but we didn't have the right insurance to actually literally get in there. But going into our next phases, we will have that right insurance. It takes money.
Yeah.
But we will have that moving forward. And I'm not sure where I'm going to shoot yet, but I know I'm going to be filming outside of the Langston Hughes projects again. I have to, because I've already established that. Being in Brownsville, growing up in the apartment, I love my apartment. My mother used to have food for us every single day. Not everybody had that. I remember my brothers used to play baseball, and there would be people that couldn't even go inside of their apartment, and it could be raining outside, cold, whatever it was outside, and they couldn't even go because they didn't have their parents there for them. They didn't have their mother there for them. And my mother would say, come up, and they would be loving up on some, Spanish rice and beans. So I have good memories. I met a lot of great people there, a lot of personalities, a lot of personalities. One woman was like, she thought she was a psychic. Just imagine how many people living on that in the one building. 22 stories, 8 apartments per floor. That's how the book, the play, the movie, it all starts with that. 301 Sutter Avenue between Rockaway and Mother Gaston, Brownsville, Brooklyn, New York. The Langston Hughes projects are the 3 tallest buildings in all of East New York, each 22 stories high with 8 apartments per floor, and whose average household has more than 6 people. That's more than 3,000 people living on one city block. That's where I live. So that's how you even enter the world. And I want to give people that feeling of this is what it was like, and really bring them there, because they look at people from there as not there. And you had asked earlier about, did I look like I belonged as an artist, as an actor going for roles, not being allowed the opportunity to audition for things with grit because I physically embodied this. That was a true frustration for me. The more committed I became as an artist, the more frustrating that was for me. And so that's what really turned me behind the camera, behind the scenes, to the pen, to write those experiences that you cannot take away.
So today we're really talking about building blocks, the foundation of who we are for the family, for the self, for society in general. So where do your building blocks begin? Who is Miss Taylor Darling?
My building blocks begin with my amazing parents, Tawana and Ralston Burtley, who raised me not very far from where we are in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn. We had a stint in Germany for a while because my father was a tanker. He was in the Army. And I have to say that foundation and those building blocks of being born of two people who really loved each other and were committed to the commitment that marriage is, really just set me up to be able to do anything and everything. And unfortunately, they're no longer with us. So that foundation and the trauma around their deaths and their loss has also shaped who I am foundationally. And I just have to say that family really is everything. And family can look like a bunch of different things. But I would say that for a child's perspective, the family and however they are received by that family, how they're loved by that family, how they're built up by that family, those are the first building blocks.
You know, when you speak about families and you speak about your upbringing, the first thing that stuck out to me, let's just get straight to it. You went to college at 16?
Yes.
I didn't want to go to college at 18.
Yes. So when I was 6, I don't know where I heard this from, but I heard that Spelman was a land where Black princesses went to thrive. And I said, ooh, I know where I'm going to go for school. I'm going to go where Black princesses would thrive. And my father, who became ill in the military, was very, very focused on education. When I tell you, I would come home from school and he'd pick me up from school and say, what is our homework for the day? And I would say, this man needs some hobbies because you should not be doing second grade work with me. But we had the chalkboards and everything. So he was with me every step of the way. And he let me know that an honor student is always 10 steps ahead. So you'd have those fun experiences where you get your science project and say, oh, I have 2 months to do this. He'd say, no, we start with conceptual design today. And I'm like, I am 8, I'm 7, I don't want to. But
What school did you go to?
I went to PS 308 in Brooklyn. It was a magnet school.
Okay.
Yes, for gifted children. Thank God it was there because that first public school was disastrous. So much. My mother left her law background to go into education because she did not enjoy how my first grade teacher interacted with me. And just to have my parents really focus on education, it gave them the time to really parent because those schedules do mirror, student schedules more. And they just really poured into us. Learning was everything, anything from how this pen is made, how a journal is made. And we really started to take off once my father taught me the game of chess at the age of 4. That became our family activity. 5 days of practice every week and 2 days competing every week. And we would go to tournaments together as a family. And he said, you learn chess, you learn life. So there were subjects I wasn't great at, but I knew how to strategize. And I knew that if I always gave 120% to everything, especially the areas I thrived in, it might kind of push that math brain kind of out of the center, that I would wind up where I was supposed to wind up. So I did wind up in Spelman and I wound up there 2 years early. So
I want to go a little bit deeper at that point if I can. When you say, okay, you guys started, you have a sister, right? Yeah. So you all are going deep into chess at the age of 4. I'm wondering, is that more of like a Joe Jackson type upbringing or a Richard Williams, Serena Venus type upbringing? Like, is there love there? Is it about curiosity and raising a kid, or is it about making a chess master?
Oh, that is a really great question. It was definitely a labor of love. So my dad was a British citizen. So I think even just having that experience, very different than the American experience of being Black here, right? So he approached it with a curiosity. He approached it from a space of, I want you both to be greater than I am. And I have the foundational knowledge, but you're going to be in Brighton Beach learning from Russians. You're going to be here learning from grandmasters because you're going to surpass me. And that's exactly what we were able to do. So I didn't enjoy chess that much. I did feel like in my head some days it was a Joe Jackson experience because I didn't want to be there. But not for my father. He was very loving, but he knew the discipline that was
involved
was needed
to be excellent.
Yeah, and that's my word, excellence, right? We were on a very strict schedule, and I just said he would have to put fashion in it. He would have to say, okay, if you win this next game, I'll buy you that bag you wanted from Walgreens. I was like, thank God, give me something to relate to.
Yeah.
I wanted to play the drums. I wanted to do different things, but he knew he wasn't going to be here very long on this earth once he became ill, and he needed me to know how to navigate this
So
world.
it was a gift.
It was a gift. It was definitely a gift, but a loving, loving gift.
Do you recognize like maybe the benefits you had growing up in a 2-family home?
1,000,000,000%.
Yeah.
So much so that shaped what I wanted to do with my life, which was I wanted to create and nurture more healthy 2-parent households. And I say healthy
Black households.
Yes. And in any household, because
Yeah.
the most important thing, I remember someone said, Mother Teresa said one day, everyone would come up to her and say, what can I do to help your cause? What can I do to be more like you? And she would say, go home and love your family.
Wow.
The more people who receive that again, the foundation, those building blocks, the more people that receive that, the less that we're going to see or feel the impact of the inequities that so many of us face. And I have a unique experience because I went from a healthy, functional 2-parent household with illness. So there was definitely trauma and sadness there, to not having that. And it was a very cold shadow to be in. Like,
As someone who didn't, I grew up in 2 separate homes and primarily being raised by my father. I want to go a little deeper into that because I do feel like I didn't really realize that until I was in my 30s. Like the benefits of growing up in a 2-family home. Do you feel like, because I know that's part of your mission in life too, right? Do you feel like people who don't have a disadvantage in life right away, that it's not, I guess, because there's people who grow up in foster care or like they lose a parent early on or something like that. Do you feel like they can't be set up with the tools that you had in a 2-family home?
I would say, again, my experience is very unique. So is yours, being raised primarily by your father, right? But I was a child who, my dad died when I was 10. So when I say I've had all these different perspectives to grow up with 2 parents, then lose a parent and have just a mom by herself. I want to just go on record and say Black women sometimes become single mothers, not because we can't find mates, but because people die and people unfortunately get imprisoned. And there are a lot of reasons why you could wind up in that dynamic. But I do feel like, yes, I've been given a lot of advantages because I had a healthy 2-parent household. I want to preface that as well.
That's important.
I have seen a lot of 2-parent households where I'm like, you two might need to do a garage house
And define
situation.
healthy for us. Is that like mom and dad were kissing, or they just didn't argue in front of the kids? Like, what is healthy?
Functionality.
Roles.
They need to see disagreements. I think that children need to see how we work through disagreements, right?
Yeah.
But we need to see disagreements in a fair way. My husband and I were just discussing this driving here. We don't have our own rules of engagement set up, and we need to set those up because we've had some disagreements in spaces where I said, I don't think I'd want my child disagreeing with their partner the way you and I are disagreeing with each other. So I want to make sure that we have these rules of engagement where if you ask me to stop, I stop. So it is not to say that there are not issues and there are not obstacles that we overcome, but we're doing it as a family. We're doing it in a respectful way most of the time. We're giving each other grace and love, and we're committed to it. There are no outside parties there. If we're dealing with individual things like addictions, if we're dealing with things like that, that we're in a space where it's safe enough for us to say, this is us, this is our unit, and we're committed to doing what we can to make it work. Healthy does not mean, it definitely doesn't mean perfect. It definitely doesn't mean without obstacles or challenges, but a space when you walk into it and it feels safe. It feels like, okay, even if something was tossed towards us, we'd be able to work on this. And we're not really open enough to give each other those tools and to know that a marriage or a partnership needs that knowledge base. We're not born just knowing how to communicate and how to work with one another.
Where do you get it?
Resources. I think modeling, looking at those marriages and those partnerships that when you walk into their home, you feel good, you feel safe, asking them what works. We need to ask questions, 1. 2, I think faith can be a great place where we can look for principles that would provide protections around different things like that. There are reasons that, there are some beliefs that say, hey, you shouldn't really be having sex outside of marriage. There are reasons for that because a whole bunch of things can happen that we may not be prepared for because we don't have that foundation set up, or that we should not, invite other people into our partnerships without the other person knowing, because again, it's a lot harder to build a structure that is going to give us the best results and the best positive outcomes if we are not mindful of how our actions and their consequences can impact those around us. And that's before we even bring children into this, right? So I would say that, yes, to your question, I've been given those advantages of growing up in a healthy 2-parent household partially, but I know people who grew up in foster care and they were placed with amazing foster parents where I'm like, I'm going to take amazing, and that's why I said families can come in all shapes and sizes.
Because you always hear the bad about foster care and foster upbringings. I've never heard of a good story from it.
I'm glad you said that, Mike, because I am the chairwoman of the subcommittee of foster care for the state of New York.
Yes,
And we are,
Ms. Chairwoman.
yes. And we are, and I didn't know why I was placed in that space because I didn't have a lot of experience with foster care, but God puts you where you need to be, right? And we're working on creating PSAs right now. So I think we have some names that people will be excited who grew up in foster care and had positive experiences. One of them is DMC from Run DMC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he grew up in foster care and his parents were really nurturing and look at what he's accomplished in his life.
Like you said, like changing the narrative on a lot of these things, like changing the narrative on foster care, also co-parenting, healthy co-parenting, because if people only think that coming from a two-parent home is the only way for your child to be successful in these things, it adds an extra layer of pressure. I have a friend right now who is a young mom, well, late 20s, not that young, but she's co-parenting. She has a lot of guilt because they didn't work out. And she just feels like, I can't do this. I can't do that. I feel bad because my son may think that, he's going to hate me one day. I'm like, I think he will love you more because he sees two healthy co-parents rather than seeing two people who hated each other in the relationship or didn't like each other. So I think that just changing these narratives can be so important and showcasing this more versus only showing, hey, if you, because then I walk around like, oh, I didn't grow up like that. It's like, showing that.
And that's when I say we need to be curious. We need to be kind to ourselves, to each other, and we need to show that grace and mercy because there are a lot of things that will happen to us that are beyond our control, right? And these narratives, they do have a way of making us feel small if we don't measure up to what the ideal is. So please let your friend know for her to do the best she can and for her to pour into herself and her child, and he's going to do great.
I also wonder, though, I feel like, do you think with the Black family, when you talked about healthy modeling, I feel like specifically for Black people, we look to pop culture for our models for so much. So when people be like, what happened to the Cosby family? We know what happened to the Cosbys. Like, what happened, Fresh Prince. We look to these people and we're like, those were the Black family. But that was really never our reality because we were always dealing with systemic injustice. Maybe you did grow up with, a stay-at-home mom and then your father was a Black judge and you had a cousin that came from Philadelphia. Maybe. But it's like, really, for most of us, that narrative, it looks so different because of the systems that we are surrounded by, because of the baggage that we come with. So where should we be looking other than the Nipsey and Lauren Londons, the people that we make these models, or the rapper, the baby mama rapper, whoever we're looking at, like who should we be looking towards to find those narratives?
Let's start in our families and let's start in our communities.
Our own families.
Yes. Let's if we're fortunate to have a couple or two couples, let's start in our families and let's start in our communities. We want to be in spaces where we can kind of touch and question our models. But I think that what Fresh Prince and the Cosby Show did for us was showed us that it was possible.
Yes.
And because, unfortunately, we don't control a lot in this country. We don't control the media. We don't control production studios. Maybe here we do, but we don't.
We do. We do. Here we do.
Here we
yes,
do.
ma'am. Here we do.
And more of us are, thank God. But it's hard to control a narrative when you don't control.
When you don't write the narrative.
When the writers in the room. Don't have those personal experiences.
Yeah.
And to know that this country's been set up to say that we are not even human, right? We're not human. Like we're not even starting from, hey, we were here. We are less than human. Yeah. And the first thing that was taken from us was our family structure. We are excellence. The excellence is in us. The healing is in us, but the trauma is also in us, right? Yeah. Those moments where you feel bad or you don't know why. We carry that. We're talking 400 plus years of inadequacies that have been pushed on us, not because we were inadequate, but because people did not want us to actualize our excellence and our power. And that is still the world that we live in, maybe more.
And if you also listen to what people say a lot of times, you'll hear, for me, my grandparents are everything. They've been married for, I guess, over 40, 70 years now.
Wow.
And so still rocking. And I know my grandmother get on his nerves. I know it. But, I know it. I see it. But, I think a lot of us, I hear that a lot, but especially with millennials. It's like, well, my grandparents, they never talk about their parents, but they always skip to their grandparents because it's a level of loyalty. And I think love that that generation had that you don't really see as often as you used to within the Black community. But our grandparents, for me, that is what the kind of love I want. It was a different kind of love. It set the tone. And when I date now, I don't think about I don't look at celebrities and so I'm like, well, my grandma, my grandfather are.
There you go, models within
They
the
are
family.
the models. Like
Yeah.
I didn't. To me, I mean, I watched the Cosby's and seen that. So, but it didn't feel it didn't resonate. It didn't feel natural to me to say like that was it when I had it at home.
Yep.
You know, my grandparents were that, and I wonder, you know, how we can recreate that, because now our grandparents are getting older, right?
Yep.
And now the younger generation, who are they going to look to, or what are they going to watch to kind of find that, or kind of define the families they want, if they see so many images in pop culture, which is kind of what they use social media, use all these different spaces to influence a lot of what they want, what they do. So it's like, how can we kind of change that narrative and help them
tell the stories? Yeah. You know, that was one project that I was working on. I have a couple that I love who's in my district, 2 of my constituents, and I just feel so amazing whenever I go in their home. And I said, your marriage is so beautiful. They are still so in love with each other. Their kids are in love with each other. And I just said, I would love to have you on Tuesdays with Taylor and just speak to you about this, because that's I want to put that, I want that story front and center.
What's Tuesdays with Taylor?
Tuesdays with Taylor is like a segment that we have because there were so many things and so many industries that people were curious about, so many topics people were curious about, and I needed a platform to bring it up. So that was our.
Love that.
It's on social media, or
yes, social media, YouTube, Tuesdays with Taylor, and they were going to come on, and then for the protection of their marriage, they decided not to,
Wow.
and that did make
That
me a little
happened.
baby sad.
Yep.
But I said, you know
but
what?
the principle is
Whatever
even better.
worked, but so I think that we need to tell those stories.
But that's what happens in a Black home. I know I grew up in it. What goes on in my house stays in my house.
True.
And see, when you
And that
have
doesn't help us.
that if you live by that, it's like we won't know.
Yep.
You know, you don't know. I probably don't even know half the stuff my grandparents went through. But I do wish, you know, I was just sharing with them earlier. I watch a lot of the round tables where they're talking about these things. I love hearing people's stories.
Me too.
I want to hear more.
Me
When
too.
you were telling me about your Black love story, I'm like, let's
talk
unpack
about
that. Let's
Yep.
unpack.
No,
I want to
love
be
that.
inspired.
Yep.
You know.
And I want to touch on what you were saying about that gap in our generations, right? Intergenerationality is so important. I think that we've stopped talking to our grandparents. I love that you speak to yours. I think that we've stopped looking to them for wisdom. They've stopped kind of communicating with us because we have phones in our hands and we feel like we have all the information in the world.
There's a generational gap.
Yeah.
A huge generational gap. And that gap and the opportunities, real and imagined, that we have, I think are a large reason why we don't see marriages, you know, going the distance, because we think we have all of these options and opportunities. Women are able to work and support themselves on one income. That was not always the case, especially in the Black family. They needed or often to rely on 2 incomes to be able to support their families, you know, but what they did not have that we have is the internet. So social media, as great as it is and as great as that platform can be utilized, you are showing me what you want me to see. You are showing me instantaneous things, easy things, things that make me feel good for clickbait. And I say, God, you know, if it's not that easy, or if my situation is not as easy, I don't want it, or it's not working. Or, okay, this celebrity got divorced too and they seem to be thriving. I'm going to go and do that. Those images were not allowed to influence.
So
Well,
so you idolize your grandparents'
Absolutely.
relationship,
Yeah.
right? And you were talking about how kids now are idolizing celebrities, right?
Mm-hmm.
So where's the middle?
Absolutely.
Because they're too far away from each other.
I think what you guys are doing right now is the middle. You know, the wisdom and inspiration and nuggets of wisdom. Like, we can control that narrative a little bit more. And you'll see that when you do see those couples that actually are really transparent and are really working on things and their content is really substantive, you see how people really are thirsty for that. Like, they run to that to say, I want to see what's going on. Like, we can talk about Jada Pinkett.
It's the stress that just entered your body.
I would say maybe not as a whole, but what she brought to that table, like, there's a realness there. There was a hole in the market for that level of realness. Like, what is the mother-daughter relationship like? How do I speak to my daughter about this? How do I speak about what works in my marriage, or what my children see works in my marriage and doesn't work? Like, how do I do that? And I think that we need more emphasis on that type of content.